And he said, really like to come to you now because I think it's really important to bring in that kind of lived experience. And I know I could definitely see you were reacting to a lot of what Dr. Chaturvedi was saying there. So can you talk us through a little bit of what your journey to diagnosis looked like?
Yes, my journey to diagnosis was very frustrating because I was left feeling unheard and uncertain, and I was feeling like I was dying, literally. It started out where I just started developing bruises all over my body. Barely I could just blink and they would just carry. That's how I felt. If I barely tapped something, I would just bleed under my skin. And I went to my primary care, and he called me and told me my platelets were 34,000 and I need to go to the emergency room. And after the emergency room, they had referred me back to my hematologist oncologist who I was seeing for a prior diagnosis. And he started running tests, and he had put me on some steroids to see what was going on. He also did a bone marrow biopsy, which he told me was normal, but it was not. Um, and so he misdiagnosed me with ITP, and then after that, he started me on immunotherapy treatments, and 3 days later, I was rushed unresponsive to the hospital. And from there, his younger colleague called it, saw it, and came to my mom and told them I had 12 hours to live. They had to start plasma exchange right then and there. And if not, I would, die. So after that, he came into the room that day. I don't know if he was summoned, called to come into that room, but he came in, was talking to my mother, and the nurses were there. And all of a sudden I just started feeling weird. And my face just drooped and I passed out. And 3 days later, I woke up in CCU, and asking for food because I was hungry. So we knew I was hungry. So
you were ready for a snack.
I needed a snack. I was hungry. And from that's when I woke up. They told me I had a rare blood disorder.
My goodness. And I can see, you're smiling, but obviously that has been a really traumatic experience. And the doctor talked about that, people being left with that post-traumatic. So from your perspective, what is the long-term impact of that on you? I can see it's been profound, but how has it affected your life?
It has affected my life in so many ways. I do have post-traumatic stress. I call it past and present. So traumatic stress disorder. I have a lot of anxiety. If I start bruising, or if I start getting migraines, which sometimes I have daily, sometimes I get sensitive to lights. I had to have, it affected my bones with some of the treatment. I had to, everything. I had to have a double hip replacements at such a young age of 43 or 42. And just getting the brain fog, forgetting how to, words come to the tip of my tongue and I just forget it. Or if I'm in a high stress situation, no matter how much I'm prepared or whatever I do, I'll just blank out and it's just gone. So, it's just trying to adjust to that, and just the daily things I had to go through. It's just adjusting to that new normal, because I'm never going to be back to normal. I had to learn how to do
your career, and obviously having 2 major surgeries, there were 2 hip replacements, and you mentioned the brain fog. Has that impacted your ability to work, or are you able to?
It has, and I'm finally realizing that it really has. At first I wouldn't realize that it has impacted my ability to work, but now I am realizing that I cannot. I was used to be a medical assistant, and so now I can't do that anymore. So I had to switch over into more of an advocacy role. And so that's what I've been trying to do.
So there's a financial implication as well, isn't there, for people trying to juggle that health and work and career?
Yes, it's the health, the work, just being able to, I'm trying to form my words right. Just being able to just live life. Like I feel like sometimes I miss out on life with my friends, because some days I have good days and I'm up, I can go around. And some days I'm good if I can even just get a shower. So it's, that mental and physical abilities and everything, because when you get out the hospital, they get you stable, but after that it's like, okay, what are we going to do now? Because I'm still having some of these systemic issues that stem from my first initial crises with TTP.
So what does that phase of life look for you now? Like, what do you have in terms of a care team around you, that are supporting you with that medically?
I have my primary care doctor and my local hematologist, oncologist, as well as I have another hematologist oncologist who's actually a TTP expert that Dr. Sher Verity knows very well. But yes, I have those three people, and I also have a rheumatologist that I'm trying to work with to see what's going on, and a neurologist, because I do have some cognitive neurological issues, and I still deal with very bad migraines, and so
lots of appointments and a burden there in terms of juggling appointments. And
I've done a couple of rounds
with that.
Yes, I've done a couple rounds of therapy as well. So, and I do suggest it to any of my other ATTP brothers and sisters. I call them, say we're not related by bloodline, but we're related by blood. So when I talk to them, I just tell them, make sure you get a therapist, someone like a trauma therapist, somebody that can actually help you through these traumas, because it's very traumatic. And I could just imagine if it was for me. And I also say for caregivers as well, because
I think that sounds as though that's almost as an important part as the physical, isn't it? Having that part there. So another thing I wanted to ask you about is kind of just shared decision making. And it sounds like, to some extent, such a feeling of control is removed because it's such a critical situation. So how important is it to you kind of moving forward to have that shared decision making in terms of your healthcare? And you mentioned that you do some advocacy work. So, how do you kind of help other people advocate for that?
Okay, it's very, very, very important. Make sure that you have a good care team, your primary care. I call my primary care, he is my Tom Brady for my football team. I have that championship team, and so he's the Tom Brady, and he listens to me. Make sure you have someone that's going to listen to you, because when I was going through this, I did not feel heard. I felt like I was disregarded. And I'm telling, I'm very in tune with my body. And when I'm telling you something's going on, I'm not saying I don't want to be here. I'm not saying it just to be here. There's really something going on. So it's just very important to have doctors that are actually going to take the time to listen. With my advocacy, we go by this phrase, there's no measure of equality without equity, which basically that just means simply treating everyone the same way is not enough to ensure equality, because it does not account for the fact that some people may have other barriers to overcome. And with that, meaning I want everybody to be able to have a seat at the table and have a voice. And you do have a voice in your care. And if you don't agree with it, or you're feeling kind of shaky, you can ask for a second opinion.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's such a powerful point, isn't it? You have a voice in your care, and so many people are afraid to have that voice because they feel they have to bow to the superior knowledge of the doctor. But like you said, your body, you know when things are not going wrong. So that's really powerful. Thank you, Anis. Claudia, I'd like to come to you to discuss the impacts of the condition in terms of the whole family, and I'd love to hear your perspectives as a caregiver and how a diagnosis of ATTP impacts the whole family. Imagine a whole plethora of things, but can you talk us through that a little bit, please, Claudia?
I can. It really does. So my daughter was 19 when she was diagnosed just a couple of years ago. She unfortunately had a refractory case of TTP, so wasn't responding to typical treatments, ended up having 3 strokes. So when we were going through it, as a mom being in the hospital, watching your daughter, and unfortunately it was during COVID, she had just turned 19, so they considered her an adult. Anytime I would try to ask questions to be her advocate, I could tell that they were struggling with her TTP, and I could tell just by the things the physicians were saying to us that she wasn't responding to typical treatment. I could tell that they had questions. So obviously as a mom, I got even more scared. I heard my daughter had this rare illness. I was searching TTP online, and you read all the horrific things that can happen with TTP. And then when the stroke started, the answers I would keep getting from her medical team at that time were, unfortunately, she's an adult. We should be talking to her. And she was too sick at that time. And she had made a couple of comments saying that, please, can you talk to my mom? I don't understand what's going on. So as a caregiver, it was really, really hard trying to challenge and trying to break that barrier with the physicians, just to ask them, like when she stroked and they moved her to ICU, I had to leave the hospital at that point. And I remember one of the things I struggled with was, will you please call me? They put her on a iPad on FaceTime so I could see her from home. But knowing that another big stroke could come, it was scary. And all I had to do was keep asking, can you please call me and keep me updated with what's going on? So it's very challenging as a caregiver, especially when you're caring for somebody who's considered an adult. I believe if it would have happened a few months previously and we were in the pediatric care, it would have been a little bit easier for me. But to bump off a niece, PTSD is real, and it's real with caregivers. Like I suffer from caregiver PTSD. I've seen what she went through. I'm scared every time there's a little symptom that comes on. I go back to what we relived and hope that it's not TTP relapsing. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. I've had support with TTP communities, thankfully. I was able to branch out and find some TTP survivors and speak to other caregivers. So that helps. My husband went into more of a strict sort of denial. He didn't want to believe this was happening. So that was another challenge for me, because I was the only one allowed in the hospital during COVID. So I was by her bedside 14, 15 hours a day until I was allowed to start sleeping there with her.
Carrying it on your own.
Yeah, so carrying it on my own, and my husband was telling people that her blood sugar dropped. So he was in a denial phase of what was happening, and I was more dealing with the reality. But I found the support group of other TTP survivors. I relied on my sister a lot. My sister was there to support me a lot. The thing I found a little bit of a challenge also was, I'm learning this along with my daughter Selena and along with the healthcare team as I go. So when family and friends are texting me what's happening, ask for this or demand for this, it's hard because I'm already dealing with the fact that she's an adult, and I'm having my challenges dealing with physicians and trying to advocate for her. But then it's also hard to try to explain to family and friends what's happening when I'm learning as I'm going too.
Do you think that your experience was kind of amplified in its traumatic nature because of this awkward transition phase? And I think something we can probably all agree on across rare diseases, that transition is poorly done, whoever you speak to. There are some good examples, pockets of examples, but generally speaking, we're really failing that age group in transition. And it sounds that that really was actually a very difficult phase for you, not having that contact, her being frightened because they wouldn't, she didn't feel able to advocate for herself in that moment. Do you feel that that was an exacerbating factor?
That was the most challenging factor. The fact that she was too sick to advocate for herself, and I was trying to, I think that adult phase, just transitioning over from pediatrics to adults, and unfortunately COVID. So I had a double whammy. I had COVID that had just started 4 or 5 months previously, and then I had her being 19 years old. So I found that the most challenging, and I really, really hope physicians listen to that part of it, that it is a challenge. She's my daughter, she's my loved one, whether it's a child, whether it's a sibling, a spouse, we're there to just want the best for them. And just that was my biggest challenge. Yes.
And I think 19 is young now in any way, isn't it? But also throw in the fact that the children have had 2 years of a much reduced and restricted lifestyle. They're not perhaps as mature even as they were, so that's also a factor that we need to take into account when planning this transition. And I really hope that you can find other outlets to really have your voice heard on that, because I think that's a really important story in that transition piece. And obviously you mentioned about your, with your husband, did you find that was a big strain on relationships with, your partner and the rest of your family, just kind of juggling all of that you had to have in your head, while dealing with life as well?
Yes, it was challenging. I know when she had her first stroke, she had the 3 strokes within a 6-day period. But when she had the first one and they sent me home from hospital, he was outside waiting for me as I pulled into the driveway. And I think that's when it really hit him, because I don't even know how I drove myself home. I cried the whole way home. And my mission was just to get home and get that iPad on so I could see her again. But he met me outside in the driveway. And I think that's when it finally started to hit him. He saw how scared I was. And I remember just asking him, he put his arms around me, and I remember just asking him to promise me that she'll be okay.
Mm. And what's life look like for her now post this, this acute phase? Is she kind of settled into a good managed situation now?
Yeah, so she's finally gone. She was able to go back to school. She got some help with the neuro deficits. And when she had first got diagnosed, she was in the policing course, supposed to graduate from policing that year. Now she's changed her career path and she's taking paramedics right now, but is thinking of going on to nursing. She wants to be able to help others after everything she's gone through.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, it's just, you could tell she's still scared. I think anytime something comes up or when something presents itself, she sees me kick in. And then she'll start saying, Mom, I think I need to get my blood work done. And I'm rushing her. I'm driving her to that appointment. Yeah, we're going first thing in the morning and we're not leaving a bee. And so the two of us, we're like two sidekicks now, where the two of us our relationship has grown a lot from this.
That's wonderful. But I guess you're kind of living in a heightened state of alert all the time, which, that fight or flight sort of emotional roller coaster is difficult in anyone. I think that's a really difficult situation to be in. And obviously supporting a loved one can be quite a lonely place sometimes when you've got to be the mom holding everything together.
Mm-hmm.
You managed to access a support system, and how has that fed into giving you peace of mind and helping you through it all?
Yeah, so my support system really is the advocacy group that we're doing now with TTP. I reach out to them whenever I possibly can. I talk to them. I advocate now for TTP. My goal is that I hope we never see it again, but if we do, I need to know as much as possible about it. And then whatever we can do to present her story to help other Canadians and other people around the world that might present themselves with TTP, just the advocacy is the biggest part for me. So I resort to the people that are going through it. My sister's a big role model for me. Unfortunately, I pushed people away throughout Selena's diagnosis too, just because I was so into her diagnosis and my PTSD, my caregiver PTSD kicked in, that I pushed some people away, and they all understand. They're there in the background. They're ready to talk to me whenever I'm ready to talk to them. But I've acknowledged that, and I've approached them about it. I think the biggest thing is you need to keep that support group around. You need to really reach out and ask for help when you need it.
I think that's a great piece of advice. What are the other things here? Is there other advice that you, having reflected on it and been through it now, that you could give to others that are perhaps at the start of this journey from what you've learned?
Yes. It's natural to be scared, but don't be scared to ask for help.
Yeah.
So when I was communicating, I'd be getting 20 to 30 texts a day. Some people would understand she's not going to answer. We just want them to know that we're thinking about them. But pick one person to give all the information to, and let that person share it with friends and family so that they know that you're not just ignoring them. And don't be scared to ask for help, whether it's for the individual that's going through TTP, because I see the side effects from TTP and what it's done psychologically come out now with certain conversations with my daughter. And I went to my family doctor's office. I asked for help when I needed it. And the first question my family doctor came out and asked, and before she even asked the question, Claudia, do you feel, I cut her off and said, I know I have PTSD. I know I have caregiver PTSD. I'm not denying it. I think time's going to help heal it. And the longer we can go and hopefully never see this again, will make it easier.
And has your daughter been able to kind of find comfort in those same groups or in her peers and friendships around her? Has she been able to maintain those friendships through this time? She
has. She really has. When I tell her that we're going to be attending a meeting, or we're going to be attending. She's like, here we go again, mom, tag team, we're going to do this together. And I'm like, yes, we're going to do it together. And she's like, Mom, can you help me with the talking? Because she stumbles. She has that brain fog too. And I tell her, we're in this together. We're going to advocate. We're going to talk about it and share your story so it helps others.
Oh, that is just absolutely wonderful. I'm so pleased that that's been a really nice sort of bonding thing for you, and having each other. You're obviously very lucky to have each other to support each other through it.
We really
give you some hope, Claudia, in that I was 24, so not much older than your daughter when I was first diagnosed. I'm a lot older now, and I'm fully functioning, and I have a career and a job and a home and a husband and all the rest of it. And
that gives me tons of hope.
I've learnt to manage the brain fog and the memory problems and all those other things, but nowadays particularly, there is no reason why she should need to relapse, even if her ADAMTS 13 drops. With that careful monitoring, as Dr. Chakravarty has told us about, that should be able to be swerved, avoided. So I want to give you that hope. She'll be fine.